Most of us grow up with a familiar picture of Jesus, teacher, healer, moral exemplar, or divine messenger. But when you step into Edgar Cayce's spiritual perspective, that comfortable image begins to stretch, reshape, and ultimately crack open. Cayce suggests that the figure we call Jesus isn't simply a perfected human or the endpoint of spiritual evolution. Instead, he represents something vastly different, something that doesn't fit neatly into the categories we use to understand ourselves. Cayce draws a sharp distinction between the human condition and the nature of Jesus, and it's not about moral superiority or a life free from mistakes. It's far more foundational. According to his readings, the distance between our origin and Jesus' origin is so profound that the two cannot be placed on the same timeline of development. Humanity, in Cayce's view, emerges into existence, enters the cycles of learning, and slowly remembers its connection to the divine. Jesus, however, stands outside that trajectory entirely. This perspective suggests a startling idea: Jesus didn't come to earth as another soul seeking growth. His presence wasn't about advancing spiritually or overcoming his own limitations. Instead, he arrived already complete, already unified with the Source, and his role was to illuminate the path for those who had forgotten their way. For anyone used to thinking of Jesus solely as a historical figure or enlightened sage, this interpretation can feel like stepping into deeper spiritual waters. It challenges us to reconsider not only who Jesus was, but what his appearance on earth truly represented. In Cayce's lens, Jesus isn't merely exceptional, he belongs to an entirely different order of existence. When we look at human life through a spiritual lens, we usually see a journey filled with lessons, missteps, breakthroughs, and healing. Edgar Cayce's perspective amplifies this idea. Human souls enter existence, drift through many incarnations, and gradually carve their way back toward the light. We evolve because we must, learning through friction and contrast, joy and sorrow, clarity and confusion. Our growth is shaped by the slow refinement of experience. But Cayce draws a dividing line here, and it's far more than a difference in spiritual maturity. In his readings, Jesus is not presented as one of us who simply advanced further. Instead, Jesus represents a consciousness whose origin is fundamentally unlike ours. Humanity emerges within creation. Jesus, in this framework, precedes creation's unfolding. That alone sets him apart, but Cayce goes further by describing Jesus as a being who remained untouched by the great fall or fragmentation that altered the human condition. While human souls experimented with separation, seeking to experience themselves apart from their divine source, Jesus is portrayed as one who never entered that phase of disconnection. Our lives are marked by the slow work of stitching ourselves back together, recovering forgotten truth, and healing from choices that took us deeper into separation. Jesus, however, stands as an example of original wholeness, a consciousness that never fractured in the first place. This introduces a profound implication. Jesus didn't incarnate because he needed the human experience to evolve. His purpose was not purification or self-correction. He came into the world already aligned with the highest spiritual reality, carrying a fullness that humanity spends lifetimes trying to rediscover. In this sense, Jesus acts less like a fellow traveler and more like a navigator, someone who knows the entire landscape because he never lost sight of it. And this distinction is exactly what makes Cayce's portrayal so striking. It reframes Jesus not as a soul who rose above humanity, but as a being who never shared in its fallen condition at all. When we talk about spiritual development, most traditions describe it as a steady climb. Souls grow wiser, purify themselves, and gradually move closer to divine awareness. Edgar Cayce applied this model to humanity as a whole, but he made a pointed exception when speaking about Jesus. In Cayce's view, Jesus did not come to earth to participate in this cycle of progress. He wasn't here to learn. He wasn't here to correct past errors. He wasn't even here to refine his character. Instead, his presence had a singular, extraordinary mission, to guide humanity back from the consequences of its own forgetfulness. To understand this idea, imagine the soul's journey as a vast labyrinth. Humanity, through its collective choices, wandered deeper and deeper into the maze, fascinated by independence, distracted by ego, confused by distance from the source. Over countless lifetimes, people found hints of the exit yet never quite reached the full truth of who they were meant to be. This is the condition Cayce often described, a long, complicated search for reconnection. But Jesus enters this labyrinth entirely differently. According to Cayce's readings, he steps in not as another lost traveler, but as someone who already knows every corridor. His role is not to find his way out but to reveal the route for everyone else. The essence of his mission, therefore, isn't self-improvement, it's restoration. He brings a clarity that has never been dimmed, a memory of divine unity that was never interrupted. In Cayce's interpretation, this makes Jesus more than a teacher offering wisdom. It makes him a kind of bridge, an unbroken link between the human world and the divine source. His life becomes a demonstration of what alignment looks like when it isn't clouded by the wounds, fears, and karmic debris that shaped the human journey. This doesn't diminish humanity's effort or growth. Rather, it highlights how far the soul has drifted from its origin and how extraordinary it is that a being untouched by separation would step into our condition for the purpose of lifting us out of it. One of the most striking elements in Edgar Cayce's perspective is the idea that Jesus existed long before the world, or even time as we understand it, came into being. Human souls, according to Cayce, have a definite point of origin. There is a moment in the cosmic story when each soul emerges, receives its spark of individuality, and begins the winding path of experience. But Jesus does not fit into this pattern at all. Cayce portrays Jesus as a consciousness present at the very foundation of creation, woven into the fabric of divine intention itself. Instead of being shaped by the evolutionary process, Jesus stands as a participant in, or even the architect of, the spiritual framework through which all other souls would later journey. This positions him outside the timeline that governs human development. Where our story begins with a first incarnation, Jesus' story stretches back into the unmeasured, the eternal. This concept radically changes how we understand his presence on earth. If Jesus predates creation, then he does not arrive as a being who gradually claimed spiritual awareness. He enters the world already holding a complete memory of the divine. While human consciousness is layered with forgetfulness, fragmentation, and the long climb back toward unity, Jesus embodies a clarity that never dimmed. Imagine consciousness as a spectrum. On one end, human souls begin in innocence, accumulate experience, and slowly rediscover their divine origins. On the other end stands Jesus, fully aware, fully whole, never disconnected from the source. His incarnation isn't about development but about demonstration. He brings to earth a state of being that humanity has forgotten but desperately needs to remember. Cayce's portrayal invites us to reconsider our assumptions. If Jesus existed before the structures of creation, then his mission was never an attempt to escape the limitations of earth. It was a deliberate act of entering those limitations from a place beyond them, to remind humanity of the divine foundation it has always carried within. From Edgar Cayce's viewpoint, the contrast between humanity and Jesus is not just significant, it is foundational. Human souls, as he describes them, are wanderers who awaken gradually. We come into existence with a spark of divinity but without full awareness of it. Over lifetimes, we stumble and rise, learn and forget, drift and return. Our progress is shaped by mistakes, karmic entanglements, emotional wounds, and the long journey toward rediscovering our spiritual identity. This is the essence of the human story, a slow and often painful movement from fragmentation back to wholeness. Each incarnation becomes a classroom, each challenge an opportunity to remember what was lost. Even our moments of insight tend to be fleeting, easily overshadowed by doubt, fear, and the weight of past choices. But Jesus, in Cayce's interpretation, stands entirely outside this cycle. His consciousness is not marked by beginning, wandering, forgetting, or rediscovery. While humanity grows through incremental steps, Jesus embodies a state of eternal fullness. There is no spiritual trial he must endure to refine himself. No karmic burden to resolve. No veil of forgetfulness obscuring his connection to the source. This difference is more than a matter of degree, it is a difference of kind. Humanity unfolds through time, Jesus exists within eternity. Humanity gathers wisdom from experience, Jesus carries wisdom as an inherent quality. Humanity struggles to reclaim its divine memory, Jesus arrives with that memory intact. By placing Jesus outside the arc of human evolution, Cayce reframes him not as a perfected member of the human family but as a living reminder of what it means to remain in unbroken communion with the divine. His presence highlights both the distance humanity has traveled from its original state and the possibility of returning to that unity. In this view, Jesus doesn't simply represent what humans can become, he represents what humanity once was, before the fall into separation reshaped the soul's journey. In Edgar Cayce's narrative of the soul, one event stands out as the turning point for humanity, the Great Fragmentation. This wasn't a single moment in time but a gradual shift in consciousness, a collective choice made by souls who wished to experience themselves as separate from their divine origin. That desire for independence, innocent at first, eventually led to disorientation, distortion, and the long descent into spiritual forgetfulness. According to Cayce, this is how humanity entered the condition we now call the fall. The consequences were profound. Souls who once existed in perfect harmony with the source began to identify with limitation. Instead of perceiving themselves as expressions of the divine, they saw themselves as isolated individuals, driven by ego and shaped by fear. This fragmentation created the karmic patterns, emotional wounds, and spiritual blindness that humanity has spent ages trying to heal. But in Cayce's interpretation, Jesus stands completely outside this drama. He is portrayed as the one consciousness that never participated in the movement away from unity. While the rest of humanity experimented with separation, chasing independence and forgetting its divine heritage, Jesus remained fully aligned with the source. He never fractured, never descended into confusion, never lost sight of the divine essence at the core of all creation. This exception is not presented as favoritism or preordained hierarchy. Instead, Cayce describes it as part of the cosmic design. One being remaining whole so that, when the time was right, he could guide the others back to their original state. In this sense, Jesus becomes the living example of what humanity once was, and what it can become again. His presence exposes the contrast. Humanity carries the memory of fragmentation, Jesus carries the memory of wholeness. And in bridging that gap, he offers a model not of superiority, but of restored possibility, the path back to unity after ages of wandering. When Edgar Cayce draws a comparison between humanity and Jesus, the difference isn't subtle or symbolic, it is vast, almost immeasurable. Humanity's story is rooted in time. We begin as sparks of consciousness, enter cycles of incarnation, and slowly weave our way through lessons, mistakes, and healing. Each lifetime becomes a chapter in a long, unfolding journey back toward the source. Our growth, while beautiful, is gradual and unpredictable. Some eras bring enlightenment, others reveal our deepest shadows. In Cayce's vision, Jesus occupies a completely different category. He is not described as a soul who simply advanced faster, nor as someone who achieved spiritual mastery through effort. Instead, Jesus stands as a being who never underwent the fragmentation that shaped humanity's evolution. His nature is whole from the outset, untouched by karmic buildup, unburdened by the emotional turbulence that marks human development. This creates a gap that Cayce emphasizes again and again, not a gap of morality or superiority, but a gap of origin and condition. Humanity climbs the ladder of awakening step by step. Jesus begins already at the top. Humanity struggles to remember its divine identity. Jesus embodies that identity without interruption. Humanity looks toward the light. Jesus emanates it. Seeing this difference is not meant to discourage us. If anything, it highlights the extraordinary compassion behind Jesus' incarnation. A being who dwells in eternal clarity willingly enters a world of confusion, not out of necessity, but out of purpose. He steps into the human condition not to share our limitations, but to show a way beyond them. Cayce's portrayal invites us to reflect on what this immense gap truly signifies. It is not a reminder of how small humanity is, it is a reminder of how far we have journeyed from our original state, and how powerful the call home really is. Jesus becomes a bridge between what humanity is and what it was always meant to remember. One of the clearest markers of the human experience is emotional fluctuation. Our inner world shifts constantly, sometimes gently, sometimes violently. We wake up confident and hopeful, only to find ourselves filled with doubt hours later. We feel love and connection one day, then withdrawal or fear the next. This instability isn't a flaw in Cayce's view, it's simply evidence that we are souls in motion, shaped by the tension between our divine nature and our human vulnerability. Our emotions become the terrain through which we grow. Anger teaches boundaries. Fear exposes areas that need healing. Joy reconnects us with our spiritual origins. Even our darkest moments push us to confront parts of ourselves we have long ignored. But this constant ebb and flow also reveals how divided we often feel inside, torn between the memory of unity and the reality of separation. Cayce's interpretation of Jesus presents a stark contrast. Jesus, he says, does not experience emotional duality in the way humans do because his consciousness is not fractured. He does not swing between inner light and inner shadow, nor does he need to wrestle with impulses that contradict his essence. His emotions, rather than being reactive, are expressions of a steady inner alignment with the divine. This doesn't mean Jesus is distant or untouched by human suffering. Instead, Cayce suggests that Jesus feels from a place of clarity rather than confusion. His compassion isn't shaped by wounds, it flows from wholeness. His peace isn't the result of overcoming fear, it exists because fear never held power over him in the first place. By exploring this difference, Cayce's perspective highlights the core of human emotional life. We fluctuate because we are still remembering who we are. Jesus remains consistent because he never forgot. And in that consistency, he becomes not a symbol of perfection beyond reach, but a living reminder of what an unbroken connection to the source can look like. Humans are defined by transformation. Our lives are a series of trials, lessons, and moments of growth that shape who we are. We confront choices that test our character, circumstances that challenge our patience, and experiences that reveal both light and shadow within us. This constant change is essential. It is how we reclaim fragments of our lost divinity and learn to act from alignment with our higher nature. Yet this very process also makes us vulnerable. We fall, stumble, and sometimes stray from the path. Our inner light flickers under pressure. Compassion wanes when exhaustion sets in. Love and patience feel finite, tied to our current capacity rather than to an infinite source. Even our most profound spiritual insights can be fleeting, often dissolving when routine and distraction take over. This is the human condition, always in motion, always imperfect, always recovering. In stark contrast, Edgar Cayce portrays Jesus as inhabiting a state beyond change. He does not evolve because there is nothing within him that needs evolution. His being is complete, whole, and unwavering. He does not struggle to maintain alignment with the divine, he simply is aligned. Where humans labor to keep their inner flame alive against the winds of temptation, doubt, and pain, Jesus is the flame itself, indestructible, ever present, and unaffected by circumstance. This distinction is profound. Jesus does not experience life as a sequence of learning experiences. His consciousness is a constant state of wholeness that mirrors the divine. While humanity moves toward integration, he embodies integration. Where we must work to recover our connection to God, Jesus never loses it. His presence illuminates the possibility of what humanity could be when reunited with its original essence. Cayce's framing invites reflection. Our path of change is real and necessary, but it is also a reminder of what has been lost and what can be regained. Jesus, in his perfect state, is not meant to make us feel inferior. Instead, he acts as a guide, a bridge, and a demonstration of the stability, love, and unity that are possible when the soul is fully awake. Edgar Cayce presents Jesus not merely as a historical figure or a spiritual teacher but as a cosmic intervention. Unlike humans, whose purpose is largely personal growth, Jesus' mission transcends individual evolution. He does not come to learn, to refine, or to recover what was lost. He comes to restore. Cayce describes this restoration as universal, a reclamation of the fragmented consciousness of humanity and, by extension, all creation that had experienced separation from the source. This perspective reframes the meaning of his life, his suffering, and his miracles. His crucifixion was not simply a personal sacrifice, it was an act that reverberated across spiritual dimensions, realigning the fractured fabric of existence. When Jesus healed, calmed storms, or fed thousands, it was not the work of a body or temporary power, it was the manifestation of a consciousness fully in tune with the wholeness of creation, channeling the unity that humanity had forgotten. Cayce emphasizes that this is not symbolic language. Jesus' incarnation demonstrates the possibility of unity without the limitations of human fragmentation. While humans work within time, circumstance, and trial, Jesus operates from a realm where these boundaries do not exist. His presence bridges the infinite and the finite, the eternal and the temporal. Humanity can only recover what he embodies because his nature is the original blueprint of wholeness. This cosmic role also explains why Jesus is not a template for direct imitation. We cannot replicate a consciousness that never fell, we cannot embody a state that was never fractured. Instead, he serves as the guiding axis, the living connection between our imperfect journey and the perfection that has always existed. Through him, the path back to unity becomes accessible, not by effort alone, but by aligning with the bridge he provides. In this light, every teaching, every action, and every word of Jesus becomes a reminder of the impossible made possible, wholeness within reach. Humanity's role is to move toward that light, one step at a time. His role is to hold the light steady, eternally present, showing that even in the midst of separation, restoration is not only possible, it is inevitable. If this video expanded your understanding of Jesus beyond the human story and touched something deep within, make sure to like, share, and comment below with your thoughts. Tell us, how does this perspective of Jesus as a cosmic bridge change the way you see your own spiritual journey? For more insights into the mysteries of consciousness, spiritual truth, and the profound teachings of Edgar Cayce, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Your support helps us continue exploring these transformative ideas. Share this video with someone seeking a deeper understanding of spirituality and the true nature of Jesus.